I'm here with Philip, and I'll turn you on in a moment, Philip. Don't wave yet. And Philip had wanted to go through together love and family life because that's the life that he's in the middle of, love and family life. And it's a text by Swami Rama. And let me turn this on here. And so Philip and the text are here with us, and he's going to go through the text with us and tell us all about living the life of being in the middle of chaos with wife and kids and dog and yoga right in the middle of that. And so there's Philip and me, and there's the text, and I'm just the guy in charge of the scrolling here. And this is the cover of the book. Isn't that fancy? Just so you can see it. And this is the page that's the title page of the book, Love and Family Life. There's the publisher information. And hello, Jose.
Hi, Jose.
And Jose is there. I can turn that. I'll just turn these on temporarily when somebody is there.
Yeah, you left out the cable company in that one too. That's why we were delayed. My family life.
I'll be quiet in a moment here, and you can. This is the dedication of the book to Sri Varatra Desikendra Mahaswami Galu, a really neat Swami. I spent a month with him in South India. When Swami Rama left the body, there was a gathering, a celebration of probably 5,000 people who came. And Desikendra Swami is the fellow who came from South India to be the what you and I know as the keynote speaker. And I met him there. He invited me to come down to Mysore with him. A year later, I went and spent a month with him, and it was a very, very enjoyable month. And anyway, he's a really neat guy, and he's the guy to whom Swami Rama dedicated this book. And here's the contents page. This is the front matter of the book. This is just the beginning. And so what we're going to go through is go through the introduction, and Philip's going to be looking at it, and then he will tell us some stories and all that kind of stuff. So now if you want to tell the story about the cable thing, that will be okay.
Well, it's not much of a story. I was just saying that it's part of the family life. We were a little delayed today because I had the cable company over and spent a few more hours than what I thought with the cable company. So just in the middle of things and moving forward with them. Well, we'll go through the text, and then Swami, I know you always extend the invitation if people have any questions or some feedback. I mean, this could be a two-way dialogue if people are interested as well too. So
yeah, whoever's here with us right now, I think only Jose is with us. The technology is showing that only one person is with us, but we never know, and so we don't know who's with us until we see a name like Jose typed in hi to both of us. And so Jose's with us, and very possibly most of the people will probably look at this in its archived format. So, but whoever's there. So Jose is right in the middle of family life too. Philip has a couple kids, and so you can type that in the box, Jose, if you want. You can tell Philip something about yourself or any question you have, and Philip will tell you all the wisdom of that. And so
I'll try.
If I can add anything, I will. And otherwise, I'm happy to mostly be quiet. So take it away, Philip.
Thanks. Before I jump into the text, I mean, I just think one kind of giving context to why this particular book. I mean, out of all the books that Swami Rama wrote, this one in particular, because it has love and family life in the top, always struck me as the one that was just dedicated more specifically to householders and how to do that. You know, the path of the household and the renunciate, being two paths. And this one's always really, it's been one of my favorite books to go through, and it's given a lot of practical knowledge. And it's a really, it's just been really important as I've grown as a husband and as a father. So I hope that there's some good wisdom that we can share in here. And certainly I think as with all Swami Rama's books, it's very succinct and clear. So we'll do our best. And if anybody has any questions or wants to stop, let us know. But I'm going to dig right into why our family is important. I was raised and educated in the cave monasteries of the Himalayas, and my family was my master. A great sage who raised me from the age of 3 after my parents had died. My master was both mother and father to me, and sorry, that's a little hard to get used to. Was both mother and father to me, and in my entire life, I've not met anyone since who has exhibited such complete love and dedication. He did everything possible for my welfare, and he never took anything for himself. At times, I felt some sadness because there was nothing I could give him to fully express my appreciation. He would never even accept a flower from me as a gesture of love. To me, he was a living example of unconditional love and selflessness. Throughout my training with him, he expressed his love in many diverse ways, which changed as I grew. Whatever good I have achieved in life actually belongs to him. He was the perfect parent, able to give total acceptance, and yet also to be honest and stern with me when I needed correction. Good guidance for a parent there. I know it's hard to believe, but at times Swami Rama even was a nuisance as a young child. He says, I was sometimes naughty when I wanted his attention, and I distracted him from the depths of his meditation. But he accepted the responsibility of training me with love. This loving relationship provided the foundation of my life, and is how I understand the great power that parents have to guide and help their children on the path of life. In the years since I've left the Himalayas, the place where my education began, I've traveled in the world teaching and conducting research, and in the process learning by observing the lives of thousands of people, both those who reside in families and those who have withdrawn from the conventional worldly life. I met hundreds of great souls in my travels, particularly in those remote mountain areas where there still dwell genuine sages who continue to guide and lead mankind by their presence. I've also met those who inhabit monasteries throughout the world and have many times been disappointed for some of those who take up this life do so from fear of accepting responsibility. Other times I have observed hypocrisy and arrogance in these supposedly holy people, as well as egotism about their status, which creates barriers between themselves and others. Pretty harsh words here for these guys. I did not observe the capacity to love and serve humanity. I visited monasteries all over the world, but I eventually came to the regretful conclusion that some of the greatest hypocrites of all time lived in those monasteries.
Amen.
That's tough words, yes. I was so disappointed and disillusioned, I thought, what good is this life if people are living so falsely? Why should people meditate or pray 12 hours a day if they are avoiding their responsibilities and developing enormous egos, rather than becoming more loving and selfless? And in the last several decades, all over the world, I have also observed many families as I traveled and taught. Couples have spoken to me of their marriages and their frustrations and successes. I have studied many kinds of families, happy and unhappy, poor and rich, young families, couples without children, and divorced parents raising children alone. I have met people whose lives were miserably poor, but who gave their children everything they could, all the love and attention they could provide. And I have met couples who came to see me together, smiling and praising their partner with sweet words, while they were thinking of meeting with another man or woman.
Philip, let me comment here just a moment. I see there's a couple more people with us. We see the number that you're there, but I'm curious who you are. And if you would, just type in the comment box just something simply hi or anything so we know who's here with us. It's not important, but it's just a curiosity thing. And if you want to make any comment or pose a comment or a question to Philip, just type it in the comments box. But let us know who you are, who's with us. Take it away, Philip.
All right. I also talk with many sincere people who sought to follow a spiritual path while creating loving families in the world. Hi, Urban. Sometimes I have found in these married people a greater level of spiritual awareness and sincerity than in those who live in monastic lives. Let me just repeat that for all the householders out there. Sometimes I have found in these married people a greater level of spiritual awareness and sincerity than those who live monastic lives. Just having a time out from my ego, Swami Jane, just relishing in that comment from Swami Rama.
Yeah, but I also know that you're saying it from a standpoint that's not about ego.
It isn't.
You can be aware that ego is there, but you can also be aware, which I know you are, of that aspect that's not about ego.
Yeah, but I think sometimes in the mind wants to believe that you have to be a renunciate to do these things, and I know so much in this practice that over the years that I really have come to see that there really are two paths, and both are equally important. And I think what he really is doing here is setting the stage for the importance of the householder, and that action, selfless action, can be learned, spirituality can be advanced, and he's certainly setting the stage for his expertise in giving the advice in this book here.
And they appear to be separate, and they're not really as so separate as they may appear. But anyway.
Yeah, which we'll dig into here in a little bit. He has some really nice, it really gets into the meat of this in just a minute. There are many sincere and dedicated people in the modern world, East and West, who are trying to follow the path of a practical spirituality. They meditate and also fulfill their responsibilities to their partners, children, and the society in which they live through their selfless, active lives. Whenever I wanted to know whether a couple I met was genuinely happy and content, I would tell them, "You seem to be very happy." And then the reaction on their faces would tell me whether they were truly loving with each other or whether their polite behavior was only superficial. I've also seen many changes in the past 20 years, both in the East and in the West. There is increasing violence everywhere in the world, a crumbling of the foundations of the society, which creates many problems, rising rates of divorce and family conflict, problems with alcohol and drugs, and the inability to raise healthy, balanced children. There is also a pattern of great stress which challenges the physical and emotional health of even those who do not exhibit the most disastrous social problems. We look at our world and wonder how we will create peace and freedom. We want to successfully fulfill our responsibility to educate and train the children, those tender buds who are given to us to nurture and raise. And I know this book was written a few years back, but I mean, certainly that stuff holds true. I don't know, even more so today. So
yeah, it does. It does seem to be that, doesn't it? It seems to be even more true.
Yeah. In answering this question,
maybe it seems more true because we are here in this moment.
Could be. These are patterns, or these are challenges that are constant throughout life, or at least in our society. In answering these questions, it is clear that family life is important because the foundation for life is established in childhood, especially in the first 7 years. I find this an interesting comment, especially that he gives a 7-year timeline. For those who don't know, my wife is a Montessori school teacher. This is a side note, obviously. And Maria Montessori, who developed the curriculum, was actually not looking at developing an education curriculum. She was actually trying to solve world peace. She was a very intuitive and insightful woman, and she wanted to set out to solve world peace, and she began to look at how she would go about doing it. And then her studies and actually took her to finding out that it was dependent on the kids, that there was a development age in the kids. And even specifically, she says the first 3 to 6 years, which is where the Montessori curriculum is developed, is the years that determines that determine how kids are going to relate to the rest of the world and set the stage for developing world peace. So I've always thought Maria Montessori was a yogi. And this time span that Swami Rama gives here is very intriguing to me.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating. Huh.
Yes. Candy, do you have anything to add? Who's sitting over there in the chair?
I can add a lot to
that. maybe some other time on this one.
Well, you can bring her over and sit her down with you if she wants and make a comment.
Yeah, do you want to make a comment on this?
Well, I just.
Well, you got to come over here. Oh, I just was talking about the foundation of life is established in childhood, especially in the first 7 years. Here, you can. I'm going to turn it over to you can sit right here in the middle there. So you got to see it. You got to get over to the side. He can't see you.
I got to be here.
In between that. See.
Oh, I have to be here.
And this is Candy.
Yes. Well, what did you read that brought up Maria Montessori?
Oh, you weren't even paying attention.
I don't know the context. I just heard the Maria Montessori.
Ah, well then maybe we'll have to do it some other time. So.
Well, he was reading here. A great man once said, "Give me only the first 7 years of life, the rest you can take." He meant that these first years are of the greatest importance in determining the course of life. And then yes. Philip was sharing with us that you were a Montessori teacher and told us the little bit of history of how this 7 years aligns with what you guys do in Montessori. And then
and also interestingly, so part of that is also now being confirmed with like brain neuroscience too, because Maria Montessori. So basically, what she did was she looked at all the children in the world, and she said, "Is she was observing, and she said she noticed that no matter what the culture, what the nutrition level, what the socioeconomic status, children did certain things at a certain age. So they all kind of walked it a year. They all started talking at around 2. And she was heavily involved with the government in Europe because her father was a politician, and she knew a lot of world leaders. She actually knew Gandhi and Stalin and all of these famous world leaders. And she noticed that there were certain things they needed, or characteristics that they had or didn't have that they needed to be really good leaders. So she set out to find out, well, when do children learn this? When do they learn these characteristics that they need in order to become, empathetic and have leadership qualities and to learn beyond their teachers so society can progress? So what she discovered was that a lot of it is learned between the ages of 0 and 6, when they have what she called the absorbent mind, where they're basically just taking in things that are happening around them with unconsciously. They're just absorbing their environment, which is really, and the neuroscience now backs that up, because for the first 6 years of your life, you are just creating new neural pathways based on the stimulus that you're getting from the world, based on the senses. So, we would call them probably habit patterns. In yoga, we would say that they're absorbing everything from their environment and they're creating habit patterns. But they have natural inclinations to develop things like intrinsic motivation and leadership skills and empathy and concentration.
So we're seeing a convergence of yoga principles and what Montessori, whatever her name was, discovered, and modern neuroscience. So there's a convergence. Everything's pointing in a comparable direction.
Yeah, so they're all kind of validating each other. All of the things validate each other, and basically say that, you can make a whole lot of difference in the world, or in a child's life between the ages of 0 and 6. It's not to say that they're ruined if they don't get it, but it's a whole lot easier if you can provide them with an environment where they're absorbing, the right things.
And if I may playfully make this comment here, remembering what Philip was comparing the idea of householder and renunciate. We're doing the same thing, so to speak, just we get people at a different stage. I get people when they're adults, and the damage was done a couple decades ago, and now we're trying to undo all of that, trying to unravel it. So process is the same, it's just a matter of timing. Exactly.
Well, and after that absorbent mind, interestingly, your brain starts, the neurology of it is more difficult, because your brain changes gears and goes from creating new neural pathways to more efficient neural pathways. So you actually prune away some of the stuff you learned if you don't use it. So then that's why it's so much harder to learn things as an adult, because the repetition has to be so much more in order to create a pathway that isn't there. So it's
but the good news is, I will add to what you're saying, the good news is it can be done.
It can be done. It's just harder. Yeah. But it can still be done.
Yeah. All righty. Thank you, Candy.
You're welcome. See you later.
Yeah, speaking of the adult that you have to undo on all these. Here, I'm back over here.
Yeah, I see you. I've got you back. And so you ready to keep going?
Yeah, I'm ready to keep going. Thanks for that. Thanks for that side note over there. So I guess the punchline is all those with little kids, don't screw it up.
Yeah, really.
No pressure. Good luck. So going back, so give me the first 7 years of life, the rest you can take. He meant these first years are of the greatest importance in determining the course of life. But he's going to this punchline. There still is work that can be done. If childhood is healthy, then we have established a good foundation as human beings, and we are able to care for ourselves, contribute to society, and share our love with others. This means we can also take the next step in life, the step of being able to explore the spiritual dimension of ourselves. However, if these first years of childhood are unhealthy, then they create problems and conflicts that we must overcome later in our lives, and which may interfere with our ability to attain our goal, what we were discussing here a little while ago. It is possible to resolve these problems and conflicts, although to do so may consume much of our adult lives. But life is like a school, and we cannot go on to the next level until we have completed the basic lessons. Families are the central training grounds for the entire life. The first step in a child's spiritual development. Hey, Raj. In a child's spiritual development, parents are their children's first gurus, and if they complete their duties wisely, then the child moves on to other levels of learning. Many of those who are sincerely pursuing the path of spirituality are parents. This role is of great importance in life, not only for the future welfare of the child, but also because taking on the responsibilities of parenthood and marriage can have such significant effects on the parents. Some people enter into the responsibilities of marriage and parenthood with great wisdom, recognizing the importance of the duties and challenges they are accepting as part of their growth. Others have little insight or understanding of the real meaning of this task. They think that marriage and parenthood exist as institutions to make them happy and satisfy their emotional desires. They think that all their relationships exist only for the pleasure they can provide. The most profound pleasures of parenthood are experienced when parents love their children without expectation of reward. Actually, family life is the most practical, psychologically satisfying way of living that human beings have yet devised, and relationships can provide many joys, especially the joy of watching children grow. There's a couple parts that I want to pause here, but this is one in particular because this part really strikes me is the why. I think a lot of people, in my experience, what yoga has brought in my life is the understanding of why I enter into a relationship, the understanding of why I actually got married in the first place, the understanding of why I have kids. And for most of, and I'm speaking for myself, I mean, I think I did start off by having expectations, this is going to bring me joy. But really what yoga, and we're going to dive into the why here in just a second. He gives a lot of really good details. But what I hope you get over this chapter or this intro and into the book is to understand the why. And I really do. It's helped me a lot to really understand. Once I understand the why, it's easy to be more skillful in maneuvering through this and allowing it to happen and learning to grow as a husband and a father. So I just wanted to pause a second there because I thought this was a really important point, that people really don't understand the why that we enter these relationships that are of critical importance. And he's going to talk about this here over the next few paragraphs.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
I love to see, I think we left off at I see relations. Yeah. I love to see the children as I travel. They are so pure and their faces are so open and honest. Children are a delight to me. They are so pure that if you love and accept them, they know it and respond. And if you don't love them, they also know it. If you want to see the image of the living God, you can see it in the faces of children.
I will add here, if I may interrupt just for a moment, Philip, that when I talk to, an adult person, I know that we're having communication when I see that purity that children have that he's describing there. I see it in an adult in front of me. I see it when I'm together with Philip and we're having a deep conversation, and all of a sudden Philip becomes that sort of pure and the face is open and honest. So again, I'm just saying that the process is essentially similar that he's talking about here, traveling and seeing this purity in the face of children. And we can see the same purity in the face of an adult when we're having a proper conversation and everything softens and any otherwise judgment passing is let go. Anyway, I just wanted to interrupt you just to make that little comment.
Oh, excellent point. Excellent point. Children are sensitive to things that many other people cannot perceive, especially when they are very young, because they have not yet learned to lie and conceal the truth. But by the time they are older, they have developed this sense of false self, especially in families where they do not feel loved or safe. Throughout my life, I have observed many great souls who have all loved children. Gandhi used to love to play with children. They would run to him and make noises in his face and play games. And adults would try to keep the children from bothering him, but he would reply, "Leave us alone, I'm playing with my friends." For a person who has the capacity to love and see the divine within, the greatest joy in the world is a child. Children reflect their inner beauty so freely. They are the most entertaining companions. Sometimes modern parents seem to be unable to appreciate this beauty, perhaps because adults are so stressed and rushed in the modern world that they have no time to enjoy the best part of their lives. Or perhaps they've been in the car with a screaming kid for the last 3 hours. I don't know. There is sometimes not beauty and joy in kids, but I think that point needs to be made.
Spoken from experience, huh?
Yes. But for the most part, there is lots of beauty and joy in kids. But
and I'm reminded, as you read that, Philip, that it's in the Western Bible that says, approach God as a child would, or something like that.
I like that. Are we just natural curiosity?
Yeah, come as a child would come, or something like that.
This process is important for parents because in parenting and being, yes, they are truly masters of patience. That's right. That's good. Well said. There is a tremendous opportunity to make spiritual progress. The process of living in a family can teach us to become more loving, open, accepting, and selfless. When we love, we can see the self of all in the faces of those we love. We can work to remove the limitations of our own petty egotism by challenging ourselves to accept and serve others without selfishness. Those parents who knowingly accept this challenge and meet it wisely can achieve levels of personal maturity, wisdom, serenity, and love as a result of their learning in the family. The path of spirituality develops as you learn to love and continually expand that capacity to love, from your spouse and family to your community, to your nation, and eventually the entire world. I want to read that one again, Swami, if that's okay. That's one of my favorite. The path of spirituality develops as you learn to love and continually expand that capacity to love, from your spouse and family to your community, to your nation, and eventually the entire world. I often say that there are two competing processes in life which determine the entire course of a person's spiritual growth and evolution. One process.
I'm curious, Philip, that you wanted to reread that sentence. Does that have personal something? Does that touch you personally?
It does, and I would
family
like
to community to nation and eventually the entire world.
Yeah, it does, and I want to dig into that, but I want to read these next two paragraphs before we do that. And I think this would be an opportunity to really talk about the why. That's what this brings up to me, and I want to go back to the circle chart. But he introduces a couple other concepts here that are important in elaborating. Sorry. So I often say that there are two competing processes in life which determine the entire course of a person's spiritual growth and evolution. One process is a tendency towards contraction, in which a person becomes increasingly selfish, bitter, egotistical, and separate from others in life. No matter how much such people pray or meditate, they can never make real spiritual progress if they continue to create walls between themselves and others. They can never recognize the essence in themselves or others. Contraction means hatred and fear. It reflects the absence of love and peace. The second process is vital, for it is a process of expansion. It's one that he was touching on, about going from the family to the community to the world here. The opening and development of love and the ability to recognize the essence in all. Only through expansion can a person ever really achieve happiness. Family life exists to help bring about this expansion, to teach you to love. When you are alone in life, you love only yourself. Then you meet and love your partner, and eventually you learn to love your children. Throughout life, this love expands, extending in wider and wider circles. And family life is a preparation to accept and love the whole humanity. So I think this one would be really nice, Swami, for people to kind of help understand this concept, would bring up the circle chart, because what he's really talking about here is...
Bring it up. I will take down the this and bring that up, and it may go goofy, everybody, because we've had some difficulty with moving screens here. Sometimes it has been screwing up the sound, but we'll give it a try and hope that it all works okay. So I'll take they're crossed fingers.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, here goes this. And here is the picture. You should be seeing it now, Philip.
Oh, good. I do see it. It went up. It went up pretty quickly. So
Okay.
this goes back to my comment about the importance of this book. For me, has always been about the why. And I think in what we talk about as yogis and as householders, when we have these conversations, we always have these conversations about where it is that we're trying to go. We have to have it under the context. And for us in this conversation, it's always about getting to the question mark, realizing the true self, right? How do we realize the true self? And what he was explaining there, and this is the way I've always held this part of the circle chart here, is that there's two ways to go. There's the contraction, which to me goes, when I'm looking at this circle chart, it's going from the question mark outwards towards the body and contracting around the real world. It's going more outwards and continuing to go outwards. But what he's talking about here is, if you want to know the question mark, then you expand. And I've always seen this in a very simplistic term with the circle chart, is that turning back inwards and going from the body in towards the consciousness. Now, when we talk about this, as a renunciate, there's one way where you can sit on your butt and you can allow these things to come forward and allow that expansion to happen. But this is how I hold this, Swami J, is always been where relationships can also help with that expansion. That relationship and relationship with others and learning how to love others helps you move inwards and grow inwards, and that expansion process is happening. So,
is a part of that, if I'm hearing you right, is a part of that seeing this consciousness inside of your partner and your children?
That's right, because when you don't, when you're so contracted, you're looking outwards, and your whole focus is around this me. When you begin to see it, it's beginning to have that expansion where you have to think about others, and you're going inwards. So you do begin to see that. So, as an example, I know you've always heard me say is that I began to really know what love was when I had to think about my wife Candy. And what her needs were in the relationship, and begin to think about her as a person and not just my own selfish needs. And I began to get this what's the word that I'm looking for? This experiential knowledge of what love is. And then when I had my first daughter, when we had our first daughter Eva, it was the first time. And I know she's out of slapping distance for me on this one, so I can say this. But it was the first time that I really understood what love is, what unconditional love was. That this was the first time I've ever seen this little baby, and I don't know what this thing is, but it was the first time that I experientially knew unconditional love. And this is expansion. This is the process. You start with one, and it continues to grow. And then with my second daughter, I didn't think that it was possible to love anymore, but then I saw that love can grow without any bounds. And this is all taking you back towards the question mark. So, going back to what I was saying earlier, the whole part of this family life is what he's saying, and the whole part of being a husband or being a father or being in relationships is all meant to get you towards the question mark. It's all meant to allow this expansion to happen, as opposed, in contrast to the contraction that we normally do. And so this is where he's talking about. These are testing grounds. It's a safe place to learn how to do this stuff, to experiment. And to learn this experience and to learn this, these important lessons. You want to say something, Swami J? Is there something?
I'm just busily listening, soaking it up, enjoying hearing this come out of you.
Well, and I would say, going back to contrast what he said earlier, as opposed to having expectations on somebody that you're going to bring me happiness, that somehow this object in the world is going to bring me happiness, and the expectations, you put this whole weight of bringing happiness on this particular person, and when they don't, because you're still looking externally, this is where the conflict happens. But if you understand the question marks where you're going, and by learning and learning to love unconditionally and working at learning to love unconditionally with this person, this is helping you get there. It's just a whole different flavor for how you approach these relationships, how you approach marriage, how you approach parenting. Always to try to get you back into the question mark, always trying to expand as opposed to contract. And I just invite you to sit with it, because it may sound simplistic, but the magnitude of what he's saying there is really
the expansion is in our little chart here over towards the purple end, the question mark.
That's
and
right.
The contraction is where we move outward into this green part and become tightened down as an individual me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Cool.
And one way you can do it is you can sit on your butt, and you can do, and as part of it, you can do the meditation and allow that to come. The other way you can do it in the world is through these relationships too. Both are valued.
Yeah.
I certainly would say your meditation is probably more important, but both are valued.
Well, they're both, in some sense, they're both meditation, are they not? What is called meditation in action or meditation on your butt?
I like that. That's a good way to describe it. Absolutely.
So anyway.
So I hope that helps. I mean, I do think that's I think when you look at all these other, I don't want to say self-help books, but when you're looking at guidance, the part that always separates Swami Rama books, and part that separates our conversations from other Swami J is always looking at the question mark. How am I trying to get there?
Yeah.
And that's what this book is founded on. And I think I think it makes it, the magnitude of that is just immense, and it's really been helpful to me.
Yeah.
So we can go back to the text and finish up.
Alrighty. So,
but thanks for that little diversion. I hope that's helpful of clarity.
Let me move this back out and the text back in, and hope that the sound continues unbroken. Here we go.
All right. Hey, there we go. It's we're doing great.
There we go. And okay.
So can we go back just to that last paragraph over here? So here we go. Yeah. So it says the second process is vital for is a process of expansion, the opening and development of love, and the ability to recognize, like you were saying, Swami J, that essence in all. Only through expansion can a person ever really achieve happiness. That question mark. Family life exists to help bring about expansion, to teach you to love. And I think that's important, because I think the teaching part is critical. It's not that it's always there.
Yes, very well said.
And when you're alone in life, you love only yourself. Then you meet and love your partner, like I was saying. Maybe you get married, and then eventually you learn to love your children. You see unconditional love, and you see that it has no bounds. Throughout life, this love expands, extending in wider and wider circles, and family life is a preparation to accept and love the whole of humanity. And I think that's really important, because at least through family life, you get an understanding, you get that experiential knowledge of what unconditional love, what it is like to truly love others. And if you don't know that, how in the world
you have to have it.
Huh?
Right? Before you can expand it, you have to have it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So here's how you start. Those who undertake their relationships from this perspective can fulfill their duties happily, leaving no pieces of their work undone. We can say that they fulfill their karmas in a beneficial way. Karma is a word that is much used but still misunderstood in the West. It simply refers to the law of cause and effect. As you sow, so shall you reap. If we successfully and lovingly carry out our responsibilities in the world, we complete a stage of life. Then, when children are grown and leave the home to create new families, no conflicts, resentments, or lingering regrets remain. All the family members move on to their next stage with a sense of gratitude and respect for those who contributed to their learning. This is another really important point to me. I mean, karma itself, this is a very important point to me in this book, because it says that that these are phases of life, that this is your karma to be married, this is your karma to have kids. And what we've always talked about in yoga is, doing your actions selflessly and giving away the fruits. So it doesn't create, it helps reduce the samskaras, right? And doesn't create any new habit patterns. And the way that you do that is through skillfully doing this, through selflessly loving and serving and giving away their fruits. So at the end of the day, when either the kids are ready to move out of the house or you're going on to the next phase of life, you're not sitting there with a bunch of regret. You have done everything you possibly can do, and the transition to the next phase is much easier. It's what he's saying here. You're not sitting around with the attachment and the regret for kids or the spouse or the other. You're able to transition to that next, because the samskars have been attenuated and you've fulfilled that part of your karma that's going to open you up to the next level. which I've always found a very important point in this book.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or am I clear on that?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think that, the important parts of that one is realizing that it is your karma, and that if you don't do it skillfully with all your heart, all your mind, as best you can, then it can continue to create barriers. But if you do your best, then the next phase is easier to transition to when the time comes.
And it also brings to mind, not to detour us, but it also brings to mind the word dharma. So what is in our nature to live out? So how do we live out our particular karmas? We live it out through the nature of the flow of things around us, and that is called the dharma.
Yeah. I agree. So sometimes parents forget that their children are also meant to be their spiritual teachers. As much as any person who teaches meditation, children are spiritual teachers because they help you to see and become aware of your personality and inner tendencies. If you are a sincere person who loves your children, you will want to eliminate any negative, harmful tendencies in your personality that interfere with your ability to guide your children. Since these negative, hurtful tendencies are also the chief obstacles to your own progress spiritually, your children illustrate for you the domain of your spiritual work. And I don't even know that this needs explanation. I mean, if you're a parent and don't see this, you're in trouble, because
sounds familiar, huh?
Children do project the stuff that you really need to work on, and certainly are much greater teachers in their own rights than I am to them. I've learned more from my kids than I think they can ever teach me. And I think this is hopefully, again, I don't want to project, but hopefully this is something that all parents get to enjoy and understand.
Yeah, hopefully.
The path of loving relationships is the path of the heart, rather than the path of the mind or intellect. The intellect can be very helpful in certain kinds of progress in the external world, but there is one thing that the mind can never do. It can never create peace, since that is not its nature. Wow, what a
Take
powerful.
that.
If the mind and ego become too powerful, they can even interfere with the seeker's spiritual path, sometimes with disastrous results. In my travels, I've met some great intellectuals whose family lives were miserable, full of bitterness and resentment. I've also found this tendency in some people who profess to be capable of deep states of meditation. But if you observe their family lives, see you evidence of another sort. The test of genuine spiritual progress is simple: the capacity to love and serve all, and to hate or exclude none. Well, that could be hard, huh? If you cannot do this in your own family, then what kind of progress have you attained?
I think that's why they call it practice.
It's what I said. It's a beautiful. I mean, here it is, your training ground. The family being able to do that. How does it go out and not get lost in hate and Trump in the world? And, it's starting with the family and honing that ability and skill.
Mm-hmm.
Love has enormous power, especially the love of a parent for his or her child. One time, many years ago, I was in a place called Rajiri in India. During those days, I would walk barefooted in the wilderness. As I walked along, I met a mother and a child who were going in the opposite direction. The mother was holding the child's hand as they walked. Suddenly, a wild elephant charged forward and ran toward us all. Without an instant's hesitation, the mother gently pushed the child behind her and stood alone facing the elephant. She said firmly, "Stop there," and the elephant stopped. I love that story. I mean, any mother would know that, right? I mean, they would step in front of a charging elephant in a heartbeat, not even think twice about it.
Yeah.
She said firmly, "Stop there," and the elephant stopped. The depth with which a mother can love her child is a special thing. A mother loves her child so much that she doesn't fear any danger into herself. Complete and total unconditional love. That's the greatest solace in human life, this real symbol of love. It's beautiful. Other times, people who have expanded their personalities with love have tremendous power to help even those who are not part of their family. Perhaps you have seen examples of this. A home is in flames and a mother and a father are weeping outside on the sidewalk. Their child is inside the burning home and they cannot rescue her even though they love the child. Suddenly, a stranger comes along and is overwhelmed with a feeling of empathy for the child who is left all alone in the burning home. He runs into the fire and brings the child outside. even though he is in danger of being burned by the flames. For a while he does not fear any pain, because his heart goes out to that. I'm sorry. For what of his tremendous emotion for that child. His heart goes out to that child, and he willingly risks his own life. Such a person has expanded his love to others, and this has achieved something great. In this simple book, I've tried to share candidly and straightforwardly my perspective on marriage and parenthood, the result of my training in the tradition of meditation, as well as my experiences in the modern world. My goal is to help those who are seeking ways to make their families more loving. If those who are on the spiritual path understand the meaning of family life, that goes back to what I was saying, understand the meaning of family life, it will help them to skillfully and joyfully complete this phase of their life. That's really nice to sync play, what I was trying to say earlier. If those who are on the spiritual path understand the meaning of family life, it will help them to skillfully and joyfully complete this phase of their life. In other books, I have taught some of the specific practices of meditation and holistic health, which are referred to in this volume. May these practical guidelines and ideas help all readers make their family lives more harmonious and joyful.
Very good. Thank you,
We can just
Phillip.
stop there. That's a great part. I guess the reader wants to know what else is in the book, but that's a beautiful. That's just the introduction. Such a powerful.
And that's
book.
the introduction. So good news is, everybody, there is more to come.
More to come.
Phillip had in mind to get together and go through this book together and do another chapter, something like that, every few days or a week or something like that. So we don't have an exact schedule of this, but probably we'll do chapter 1 whenever Phillip says it works right for him, probably next week, probably next Wednesday or Thursday or Friday.
Yeah.
Approximately this time of day. This time of day seems to work well for his schedule, and it's open time for me. So we will do this and continue through the chapters.
Yeah, and if anybody, I know they're going to be watching this at a later time. If you have anything that you want us to discuss or specific questions, feel free to put them in the comments section down below. We could bring them up as we start.
Yeah, we can bring them up and do them. And if there's a question there, Phillip, that you see a question in there and you want to talk some more about it, tell me, and we'll get on here together and open this up again just to answer that question.
Okay.
If there's anything you see like that. And so we'll have a special time on here just to answer that question if one should come up that you feel drawn to commenting on in greater depth. Okay. So thank you all for visiting. Thank you, Phillip. Any other closing comments, Phillip?
No, that was fun. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity. That's fun.
And please say thank you to Candy for joining for a minute and talking with us. Okay. And so, all righty. So bye-bye all. And so here we go. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Candy.